Welcome to One Interview, One World. This is Lainey Kay, and this is a show about interviewing people from all walks of life because everyone has a story to share and we can all learn from each other. I hope you enjoy listening. Today I am with Liesl Ulrich-Verderber, who is the CEO of Ever Widening Circles, a global positive company with 6 platforms created with the goal of proving that it is still an amazing world. By the age of 27, Liesl was also the founder of 3 of those media outlets aimed at elevating goodness and progress for us all. An education site, EWCed, an endeavor to improve business and healthcare culture at Amazing World Media, and most recently, the Conspiracy of Goodness Network, a personal and professional growth platform where people who value and work in goodness can connect, collaborate, and change the world together. Her intention is simple: to celebrate the quiet wave of goodness and progress going on all around us that almost no one knows about, and to open a new era for us all by changing the negative dialogue of our times. She was raised in the Green Mountains of Vermont and brought her rural sensibilities to a Harvard education, a combination that is kicking the doors open on possibility. With laser focus on using her background in design, economics, and education to make the world a better place, she has developed a personal mantra around what she gives her attention to. Is it novel? Is it useful? And how does it help? Carrying both Irish and U.S. passports, she also brings a global perspective to her work, having spent most of her life traveling to off the beaten path places around the world. As a global citizen, Liesl is uniquely positioned to dig in and answer some of the most important questions of our time. So thank you, Liesl, for coming to One Interview, One World podcast, and I'm very happy to be interviewing you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Very good. Because I feel like you're quite accomplished for your age, I would love to ask you about growing up. What was your life like growing up?
Yeah, I think I am very fortunate to have grown up in a household that really was about being curious and exploring the world in lots of different ways. My mom, who is the co-founder of Ever Widening Circles and the suite of platforms that we work on, she was the kind of mom who, if we were interested in Egyptology, she would let us go down the rabbit hole of Egyptology. If we were suddenly interested in bugs, she would help us find every entomology book. My dad was equally as supportive in all of our endeavors. And so I really was very fortunate to grow up in a household where the aim was not about finding yourself necessarily. I think a lot of the time, you go into adolescence and all about finding yourself. I think I grew up in a household where we got to find ourselves at a very young age and what we were interested in, and we were very supported in that way. And so growing up, I like, people would say that we kind of grew up, our house looked like a combination of like the Addams Family mixed with the Natural History Museum. My parents are big nature nerds. And so I just grew up constantly in this curious world that I think helped me develop my outlook on the world today.
Yeah. So when you were interested in something, you had a passion in something, and we're like, yes, let's go with this and let you. What about not just learning, but what about like experiences? Like, say you want to do gymnastics or you want to do basketball, which I hear you did.
Yeah. Well, I did do gymnastics for a while. But when you are almost 6 feet at very young age, gymnastics is just really not in the cards. Your feet are on the ground when you're on the gymnastic poles. But again, experience wise, I'm very fortunate to have had a breadth of experiences. I think every little kid has the moment where they don't want to go to soccer practice and they're like holding on to the, steering wheel. Every parent has probably dealt with a child that really didn't want to go to art camp or whatever. And I had my fair share of those things. But again, very fortunate our parents really put experiences above anything else, experiences above gifts, experiences above, a lot of things. And so I was very fortunate to travel at a very young age. That was where my parents put a focus of us as a family getting together and doing stuff together. And so I was able, through the experiences, to develop, again, this outlook on the world that was informed by other people's cultures, other people's way of living, other people's understanding of the world around us, and very very fortunate as well to have grown up in Vermont, which is got all of its sort of good sort of East Coast stuff going on. And then to also have family in Central Illinois. So I also had this understanding in the dichotomies of America, those two different worlds there. And so I was very fortunate to grow up in a space that helped me learn to be very fluid in a lot of different spaces, which I think has really helped me understand people as we've built out all of those different platforms.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were growing up, did you have mainstream education or did you have a different education?
Yeah, so I did when I was very young, K-8, I went to a Catholic school, not because my parents were religious, but it offered one of the best educations in the area. There were some great teachers there who really were very into us learning how to write. And I think that has been clearly, as a writer, I think, shout out to Mr. Wayland, really made it so that I became a good writer at a young age. And then I went to public school for my high school experience, which was very intentional. The public school I went to was just the local Vermont BFA St. Albans, which had a lot of students go on to Harvard and Princeton and a lot of good schools, and also had that sort of small town vibe of being the basketball player, knowing everybody. And so it was that good world, I think, of being able to be in the real world for my teenage years and not off in some prep school or something like that, really being with people that I think is really important to my upbringing and my outlook on the world.
And then what about media when you were growing up? Were you able to watch like a lot of TV or did you not watch a lot of TV? Were you exposed to a lot of media?
Yeah. So growing up, this was back in antenna times. I don't think my parents got Dish until very late in the game. And so we had 30 channels growing up. There was local PBS, Vermont PBS. There was a Canadian channel. We lived near Quebec, so it was all in French. So you either had to learn French or that wasn't a channel. And then like the local news channel or whatever. And so I'd spent most of my childhood at all watching PBS, if anything. But then a lot of my time was also spent listening to NPR. And, I guess it's consuming a lot of like worldly media as a little kid. Now that I look back on it, very few people can say that their favorite radio program is like a 12-year-old was Prairie Home Companion or something like that, or Wait, Don't Tell Me was something that you wanted to dive into. So I didn't really consume a lot of like traditional mainstream media. I feel like I'm catching up now with like references to things that people my age know about, which I don't feel like I lacked for knowing those things. But they definitely, again, built up this sort of worldly view of hearing, the different radio announcers on NPR and growing up with their voices and learning about the world that is much bigger at a young age, I think was really important to, again, my outlook today.
And did you seek that on your own, or was that like your parents showing you or letting you learn about that?
I think it was just sort of on. I think certainly when it came to the radio, it wasn't like I like tuned into NPR, although I did make my parents turn on Wait, Don't Tell Me. But I think it was just sort of on in the background of my life. And then when it came to PBS and the things that I watched, it was just sort of the only thing that was available. Like, I think my parents were very good. They were like, you're inside, it's a rainy day, go ahead and watch TV. But they were very good about keeping educational media in the flow. And I think the one thing that I think was very cool about them growing up was Wednesday nights on our local TV channel PBS channel was the science night. And so we would sit down as a family for 3 hours of programming from like Nature to Nova to whatever the other thing was. So we had our like science night every Wednesday with popcorn. And as funny as that sounds, like that was still to this day when I go visit my parents and on Wednesdays, we're like sitting down for science night. So I think it was a little combination of both. Eventually them kind of showing us made it habitual and made it so that we sought out that kind of content on our own.
Yeah. Sounds like you had a great upbringing and it sounds like you have really cool parents. So that's
nice. I very much appreciate having the parents that I did.
And then tell me about some of the travel that you've experienced.
Yeah. So the travel that we've experienced has really ranged. My parents were never one to like go to the resort in the Bahamas or whatever. They were the kind that were like, we're going to a very remote island and we'll probably have bed bugs and you'll have to fend for yourself in the morning when you're eating cereal because chickens are going to come get you. Which is a true thing that did happen on one of the places that we went to. But they were really about us experiencing culture. They were very fortunate when they were young people to go live abroad. My dad played professional basketball in Spain. And so they lived in this little tiny town in northern Spain and then practiced dentistry for a bit in a remote town in Italy. And so they really appreciated travel as a form of culture, not as a form of sort of just, seeing the sights and then going laying in a beach chair. And so, when I was very little, our first big family trip was to Ireland and Northern Ireland, where at some point I think we ended up in one of the IRA headquarters at like a family gathering of some kind. Not our family, they just welcomed us in, and there was all these people who were IRA, headquartered people, and we're having like, potatoes and leek soup with them and a pint of Guinness and just playing around on the floor and listening to music. And other times we would end up in really remote areas of Spain with bird nerds chasing us out of the country. I can't really remember how that happened, but it did. Or, all of that kind of very off the beaten path travel where people don't speak English, where you really have to learn to fend for yourself, where, you don't know how to read the menu. So you say, bring me the food of the region. And then strange things end up on your plate, and dad has to try and wolf down a bunch of weird sardines because none of the kids want to eat them, but you don't want to be rude. I mean, these are the kind of experiences, or sleeping under your car in the Andes because we got lost up on a mountain. I mean, we were always pushing the limit. And my parents, I have two much younger siblings, and so I really appreciate they were quite pushing the limit with kids that were very, very young. But all those experiences gave me a lot of, I think, resilience, gave me, again, a view of what other people's lives are really like, not the version that was sort of candy coated. And then led me, when I went on to college, to spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia and spending time in Tibet and India and Nepal, and in those places, and in China. And in those places, really, again, stepping out of my comfort zone and being in immersing myself in someone else's culture. Because to me, I think those are at the bedrock of who I am, those travel experiences, not only when it teaches you resilience and what to do when it's very cold outside, you haven't eaten in 24 hours and no one speaks the language, but also, this is how people live. People live just the same as us. They get together for family dinners. They enjoy the same things. They want education for their children. They want what's best for their children. They want to see their grandparents and parents, live to old age in comfort. It's these same basic principles around the world, which everybody tells you, but until you're sitting at a dinner table with somebody and nodding over strange food, it doesn't hit, I think, the same way until you're really in those experiences.
Mm-hmm. So you were doing quite a few study abroads, it sounds like.
Yeah. So I spent most of my summers when I was at Harvard, and then most of my spring breaks traveling to Southeast Asia. I did quite a few courses studying. I was studying architecture in college, and so I was studying Buddhist and Hindu art and architecture in Tibet, Nepal, and India and Thailand as well. And so, really getting in depth with those cultural practices, learning more about them. It was really a wonderful experience to get fully immersed, during my summer months, during those formative years, not only in another culture, but in another religion, and really discovering, again, those same waves that course through most world religions, harkening back to going to a, Catholic school as a kid, but not being Catholic, and then being able to see, sort of as an observer to religion and culture has always been something that I think is very interesting and resonated with me throughout my life.
Mm-hmm. Which is probably the golden rule: be kind to others, just, or be treated how you would like to be treated. Yeah.
It's very similar with everything, and I love that you can go to such disparate places and have such different rituals around all of the things. I think ritual is really important. That's something that I see around the world. But that same golden rule kind of aspect is always there. Gives me hope for a brighter future for those that are practicing an organized religion and those that are just livers by the golden rule who want goodness in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Oh, that is a good question. I think it varied wildly. I wanted to be an Egyptologist for a very long time. There's a very funny video of me as a kid erecting a pyramid made of Legos and giving my parents a very stern tour of it, and calling it an Egyptian tumor the entire time. My mom refers to that as the Egyptian tumor reference. At the time, my grandfather had cancer. And so I think that I was like taking that language and conflating it with tomb. But anyway, so I wanted to be an Egyptologist. I wanted to be the captain of a spaceship, obviously little. For a really long time, I was interested in becoming an architect or urban designer, urban planner. That was sort of what I wanted to do when I got into college. And so I think it just kind of kept evolving. I recognize now that a lot of what I was wanting to be was somebody who built things and who discovered things. If we look through like what the basic, who built things, discovered things, and then taught things to people. I think those were the things that I was play acting. Those are the things that I was actually doing in my life as I got older and went from play acting to like clubs and majors and all those kind of things. And so it really has been this progression of, going from giving lectures about the Egyptian tumor to now, educating people with my work. So it's a sort of it's funny to watch those progressions throughout life.
Yeah. The underlying goal is to help and teach people, it sounds like. Yeah. So sweet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, for sure.
Were you a writer? Was that something you enjoyed doing, or researching and writing?
Yeah, I think writer, it's one of those things that I even forget to mention about myself because it has been a part of who I have been for so long. A very good family friend of ours likes to remind me that when I was very little, she told me I should be a writer and that she is responsible for my career now. Yeah, I think writing, expressing myself through writing has always been something that I wanted to do, even though I cannot spell to this day. That still hasn't impeded my love of writing. I can remember several teachers and educators along the way who really helped me progress in my writing and really formulated who I am as a writer. And so writing has been ever present because I think it's one of those central skills, not that it's a lost art, but it is a central skill to communication. It is a central skill to being able to tell a story. And I think I recognize at a young age that writing could be a space where you could, without having to have a conversation with somebody, you could get your thoughts down into one place. I've been sort of perpetually excitably scatterbrained my entire life, but writing was a place where I could really focus in and get a message across to people in a very clear way. And so it is funny. I very often forget to mention writing as something I was interested in as a kid because it was just what I did, those kid books of poetry that you wrote. And then as a teenager, the sort of drawn on diaries that no one needs to read. But yeah, that researching and writing piece have come together, I think, throughout my life to really be something, again, that has led into what I do today very, very strongly.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you said that you're not great at, with your spelling, and that didn't hinder you. That didn't stop you. And I like that because like just getting down on paper what you're thinking is a wonderful thing. And to share that information is wonderful. And yeah, thank goodness we have, things that take care of that and can check for us. So we don't have to worry about that so much, but you're not afraid. So that's good, because I think that a lot of people growing up, when they aren't good at spelling, or then they feel uncomfortable writing. So
yeah. And I think there's also, I'm not a naturally incredible reader either. But I was, again, very fortunate to have, I think it was a third grade teacher, Miss Quinn, who, and I keep referencing these educators who I was very fortunate to have.
Yeah.
Because she realized that even though I couldn't spell, she never docked me points for not spelling correctly. She recognized that I had a passion for writing, and that I was a creative writer, that she could show me a picture and I could write a whole story around that picture. And so I was very, very fortunate to have people in my life who recognized that even though I wasn't the one that was reading every Dorothy Canfield Fisher book and getting my Pizza Hut coupons or whatever, that was the prize to reading all these books. You'd get a Pizza Hut coupon. That even though I wasn't winning those awards or couldn't even spell, I couldn't spell very until maybe 8th grade. That I was still a writer, and that they encouraged that. And so I feel very fortunate that educators never docked me points for not being a good reader or being a good speller, but still saw a writing potential there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you feel that your education helped expand and learn about the world, or do you feel like your upbringing and life experience helped with that?
I think it's both. So I feel very fortunate that my upbringing gave me a very worldly experience, but then particularly in high school, that it gave me a very local experience. And I think that all of us thrive when we can take two disparate understandings of the world and make something new out of them. And so I feel very fortunate that I was given the language and given a framework to understand the world that encompassed both a global perspective and also a local perspective. Because when I went on to Harvard, again, Harvard has a very global perspective. They're very global reaching. And I would be in courses where we'd be talking about these esoteric things. And I'd really have questions that were sort of the everyman questions, right? Okay, sure, we can have these big, long discussions about the facade of a building, but what does that mean to the economics of the people that are living in that area? What does that mean if you're going to put this big old building in the middle of things? How is it actually going to affect the local people's lives? And so I feel very, very fortunate to be able to be a translator in some ways. I think having a design background, I kind of shifted from just architecture to architectural design and design in general as my focus. Being a designer, you have to be able to translate for people, and knowing how to translate involves knowing a little bit about a lot of different languages, the language of local, the language of global, the language of technical versus the language of art, and being able to translate between spaces that don't always want to communicate with each other. And so I do think that it was a combination of both. I think I am able to speak to a large number of things because of my Harvard education. I met so many more people that were incredibly diverse in the United States from there. And then add that to my local education, and then add that to sort of the global perspective that I was able to glean as a child, and through my parents really pushing us out into the world. I think that all in concert leads to where I am now. So I don't think it was one or the other. I really think each one in concert helped to elevate the other.
Yeah, thank you. Since we're kind of talking about like the raising of somebody, what would you recommend based off your experience that would be good for children or parents to instill in children, or the education environment to instill in children that helps them to become like a kinder, more open to other people?
I think the biggest thing is encouraging kids' natural curiosity. I think, and this is central to EWCed, which is the education wing of what we do, which is really how I came into all of this work. I have a very strong passion for making sure everybody is educated in a way that helps them understand possibility. And I really think that the biggest thing for any kid is teaching them through curiosity, helping them maintain their curiosity through life. I think, why do we think it's so rare that people want to be lifelong learners, right? It's because they somehow their curiosity wasn't diminished, that light wasn't dimmed. And I think about so many of the kids that I talked to when I was developing EWCed who had remarkable passions for things when they were little, but circumstances of who their parents were or the kids that bullied them, those things were knocked out of them. And it was no longer cool to be curious or interesting to be curious about the bugs around you or the nature around you or whatever it is. And I think as we start to lose our curiosity, we start to lose our spark. And so I really think the best thing that we can do to encourage children to be open is to encourage their curiosity, because curiosity at its core will make any child more intellectual as they grow up. They won't just take everything at face value. They'll cross-reference ideas. They'll live more abundant lives. They'll also be able to be kinder to other people, because even if someone doesn't have the same viewpoint or opinion or background as them, they can approach that situation with curiosity instead of with malice or contempt. One of the things that we always say is turn contempt into curiosity. If you see a Facebook post that's like making you feel terrible, what if you got curious about why that person felt that way? It starts to give you more empathy, compassion, and a real space for dialogue. And so, yeah, I truly believe that if we give kids a sense of curiosity, they'll see the world in terms of possibility. And after talking to just student after student who is a young adult that doesn't see any sense of possibility, sees sort of a worthlessness in their adulthood. They see sort of life ending after high school ends. I really think one of the most important things we can do as adults with any child in our lives, whether you're the cool aunt, whether you're the mom, whether you're a mentor, whether you're a coach, is if you have a young person who's curious, engage with that curiosity, make them feel like that's a superpower of theirs so they can take that into their life throughout their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful perspective. Thank you for sharing that. So tell us about Ever Widening Circles and how did that come about?
Yeah. So Ever Widening Circles is a positive media company on a mission to change the negative dialogue about our times by showing people that it's still an amazing world. And the backstory to Ever Widening Circles is, I think, quite interesting. Maybe I'm a little biased because it is a little bit of my story to tell. But back in 2014, my mom, who is a dentist by trade and has been a dentist for 30 years, She ran the kind of dental practice where she saw kids from 3 years old up until now they're in their 30s, and really engaged with people on a meaningful level. She keeps the humanity in healthcare, she and my father. And one day in 2014, she got an email from a patient of hers, who she had known since he was a very young man, and he had enlisted in the army and was currently on deployment and was seeing really the worst in the world, and emailed my mom at a very low point in his life saying, Dr. Linda, why he emailed his dentist, I think, that speaks to who she is, connecting with people.
Yeah.
Emailed his dentist, who seemed like one of the worldly people in his life, and said, Dr. Linda, like, I'm feeling this way about the world. I'm feeling at a very low point. Can you send me anything? It's like, I need to know that the world is still a good place. And so my mom took this to heart, and so she started scouring the internet for any place that was just talking about good things happening in the world that were meaningful, not just like, boy has pizza party, or, puppy saved from mailbox, right? Like stuff that was really like, the world is making progress. And she couldn't find any place that didn't have some very strong political agenda, was very left leaning, was very right leaning, or that didn't have, 1,000 pop-up ads and some weird commercial agenda happening. And so my mom, being my mom, following her own curiosity, decided, well, if there wasn't a website for this, I will make my own. And so in 2014, she founded Ever Widening Circles. She started writing one article herself every day on any subject under the sun, as long as it proved it was still an amazing world. So she was writing about art, that was art, science, people, just the absolute, spectrum of things she was writing about was pretty incredible. And at that time, I was a junior going into my senior year at Harvard. I was incredibly curmudgeon-y. I believed that the world was not a very positive place. I was very cynical. I'm not a naturally positive person, so it's funny to have my job be so positive. And I was like, oh, Mom, with her stupid positive news website. I was probably a real joy at Thanksgiving. When I graduated from Harvard, she was at a place, the person who had originally started the website with her had moved on. And she was really at a crossroads. She knew this was something she wanted to retire to, and she knew this was something that was really meaningful. I knew that I loved the education component of this, and I really saw it as an interesting business challenge. And so I went to her and I said, if you want to turn this into a business, I'm here to help you. Let's figure this out. And I, again, fell in love with writing through it. And so we really found our way together. I was kind of working on the nuts and bolts kind of things. She was on the vision. We really worked hand in hand to grow from 2015 when I came on until now into this media company that has arms in education and business, and now a network connecting people who are doing good in the world. It's really been an incredible growth trajectory for the two of us running this business and learning. I think the biggest thing is learning how the internet works so that we can, and how media works, so we can use it for good, so that we don't have to feel like we are constantly on a negative treadmill when it comes to the media we're consuming, and when it comes to just the onslaught of stuff that comes into our lives that seems so negative. So it's really been quite an interesting journey from that first 2014 email until here today.
How many people actually work with your company?
Yeah, so right now we are a team of 9. We have 9 people that work with us, ranging from full-time to part-time. And yeah, everybody on our team writes. That's something that we think is really key, that everybody knows our content very well. And it's been really fun growing into that team, because it feels like finally we can be doing the things we want to be doing. When you're starting up and you're like, oh man, I really wish we could have an influence in education. And you're like, oh, we don't have the time. Maybe we'll get to it eventually. So it's been really wonderful to be able to grow our team and find people that really get it and want to work with it, because it is the kind of work that's really soul fulfilling, and we love working that our team feels that way. And we really try and encourage that environment within our company, because I don't think you can write about being joyful and curious and hopeful unless you're creating a space in your business to be that.
Mm-hmm. You all have to have the passion. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, tell me, because Ever Widening Circles now has like quite different media outlets or different platforms. I'm not sure how you describe them. So like the education one, I guess, why don't you elaborate on that one and then tell us about some of the other ones?
Yeah. So EWCed is we take sort of the best content for educators on the Ever Widening Circles website and create what we call touchstones, which are really simple ways that parents or teachers can engage with their children. And all of those touchstones feature a video that we've vetted. We know it's good. We know it's educational. And then around those, we have questions that students can dive into to dig in deeper. We have this great section that talks about why this matters in the world. I think a lot of time education can be very abstract, right? We're not connecting the nuts and bolts of learning to the real world for students, which is really a key problem I wanted to solve with EWCed. So with Ever Widening Circles, every one of our articles features a video, because we want to be there for lots and lots of different kind of readers and learners and ways that people absorb. And so we've taken that over to EWCed, where we found there was a challenge for educators and parents to find content that was, video content that was engaging for students, but also educational and not someplace you had to worry about what was going to pop up next on the feed, And so with EWCed, has really been about giving kids a sense of possibility and helping them see the wider world. And then again, connecting those nuts and bolts of learning. We found that teachers are having a really hard time having teachable moments in the classroom. I was talking to one teacher who had been teaching for years and years, and he said, back in the days when we launched the spaceship, or when we first landed on the moon, every kid had watched the same news announcer talk about that, were informed in the same way. And you could talk about the moon landing as it related to science and as it related to mathematics and all those things. And so it gave kids a sense of possibility. Every little kid wanted to be an astronaut back then. But nowadays, students aren't consuming the same media. They're going home and they might be hearing opposite ends of the news spectrum, or they've dove down some rabbit hole on their own social media feeds. And so teachers were having a really hard time saying, here's how this is widely applicable, when one student has a completely different view of the world than another. And that video content really allows students to pick up on what's happening, connect it to their own experience. And it's been really wonderful seeing students. You can watch the light bulb go on behind the eyes. I was teaching, I like to go teach these courses sometimes to students. I was teaching one, it was a bunch of, high school boys that, had hoods over their heads. They were leaned back in their chairs. I was going in there wearing clogs and a vest. I was classic, assistant teacher look. It was really, I don't know what I was doing. Personally looking that way, I should have probably tried to look like a real person. And they were not having any part of me. And I was like, all right, well, anyway, we're going to watch a video together and then we'll talk about it. And I forget what it was about. Oh, it was about what astronauts dream about. And these kids are not science kids. And by the end, they were all leaning in. They had questions. They wanted to learn more about science and they wanted to learn more about space. And their awe had been turned on. And we know that awe changes your brain. It makes you more receptive to learning new things. And so it really was a cool experience. And I've had similar experiences, lots of different things where this video content can be a conduit for teaching science and math and culture and all of these things. And students will really drive that if they're curious. Again, getting on the curiosity train is so critical. So that's sort of the impetus behind EWCed. If you have parents who are listeners, if you have grandparents who are listeners, this is an incredible way to sit down with your younger, we say, I think fourth grade, probably to high school, depending. These videos really range in being interesting to that whole range of young people, young folks. Sit down and try one out. If you go to EWCed.com, you can go check out and watch some of the videos together. It's a really great way to have a conversation with a young person in your life and see what they're curious about, so you can sort of mine into that a little bit more.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that you've done that. And I also think that in the school environment, they don't have time during the school day to let the kids ask questions or be curious. They just are given a ton of information and then told what to do with it. But it's hard for a teacher, I think. I would love for, more of the school classroom to be more of a dialogue where the kids get to ask questions and they get to discuss things and then about the world, like you say, applying what they're learning, because a lot of times it isn't getting applied. So, yeah. Yeah,
I think one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of educators to do that is, my job is sometimes just watch YouTube videos to find the good ones. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And a teacher does not have the time to do that. So we really think of ourselves as curating those experiences for educators and giving them all of the tools that they need to just put this into, find 10 minutes in that lesson plan to put this in so that it can catalyze a new unit, so that it can catalyze a new learning experience. We have one school that actually just made a whole class around EWCed that is their curiosity driven learning. So there's lots of ways that it can be used in education that I think more and more educators are recognizing this need to include technology in the classroom. And I'm really excited. Obviously the pandemic has been a big weight on the education world. I think at the same time, it's opening us up to the possibilities that technology unlock and the ways in which finding differentiated learning systems for students can really make a difference in their overall academic achievement. I was talking to one student who, when I asked him, he said he was doing better. He was a student that had traditionally not done well in school. But then when he was at home, he was doing much better because he had been dealing all day with bullies and he'd been dealing all day with the pressure to fit in and the pressure not to stand out and the pressure to do well, that he was doing poorly. And so being able to do work on his own time, not having to care that he was going to school with unwashed clothes or didn't have access to a shower, those things were no longer impeding those social things were no longer impeding his ability to learn. Now, I know there's a lot of students who on the flip side have had a very negative experience with that, but I think either way, what it is showing us is that students can have differentiated learning experiences and have better outcomes at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not, as we've learned, it's not, the education system that it is right now is definitely not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, yeah. So that's, hopefully that's something that will change and get better from this pandemic. Has probably helped people realize so many things, even just working from home. Like people are actually probably more productive working from home. We're working too much, sometimes, but
I think that's so true. And I think the more that we look at these, obviously the pandemic has been a world changer. It has not been positive on the whole, but I think there are things that we can learn and take out of this moment in history that can inform the way we work, the way we interact with our families, the way social media influences our lives. You name it. I think this has been a really good space of reckoning for a lot of people and of understanding themselves and the lifestyles that they've built in a deeper way. And so again, not trying to put any kind of gilded look on the year and a half we've all had, but that is to say, I think we can use it as a space of reflection and as a springboard for a new era of how we look at things.
Absolutely. With Ever Widening Circles, it has like a range of subjects, and every day the goal is to write something interesting. So tell me, what is a typical day? What is a typical work week? And, some of the things that you're working on that inspire you.
Yeah, I think one of the most fun parts about our job, and I say our job because I'm not doing as much writing as I used to do. I have this great assistant who keeps reminding me that I need to be working on the business, not in the business, thank goodness for her. But one of the most fun things is usually Wednesdays are writing days. And as we're learning about the things we're writing about, for instance, today, Sam, who's our editor in chief, was writing an article about hummingbirds and sending us all these like hummingbird facts that were apparently hummingbirds can't walk, they can only shuffle. And so it's this funny world where we're constantly exchanging these odd bits, particularly in the science world. But of course, we're doing things about people doing extraordinary works around the world. But we keep exchanging these things that bring us delight, bring us joy, bring us curiosity. And I think because we approach every article, we choose articles that we're not choosing subjects based on, oh, it seems timely, let's do it. We're doing them because we ran across the concept and it was like, we got curious, we wanted to dive in. Very seldom does somebody find a subject and then we pass it on to somebody else, because you really have to have that excitement to write the article. That I think that's like a part of what makes an Ever Widening Circles article so fun, is that you are along for the ride of us exploring our curiosity, of us getting excited about the subject. One of my favorite things to talk about always something called the Rainforest Connection, which is this gentleman named Topher White, who is taking old cell phones, and he's then from there able to create these arrays that go and are saving the rainforest from being deforested. Essentially, he's created from the old cell phone that you probably have sitting in a desk drawer right next to you. He can create these things that sit on the perimeters of forest reserves, and can listen for when a chainsaw starts up, because a really big problem for rangers is not that they can't patrol the area, but they can't even hear over the cacophonous sound of the rainforest of the birds. They can't even hear the chainsaws. So you can have all this heavy machinery coming in to log things off. No one can even hear it, even if it's only 100 meters away. So we created this system that can listen for the sound of chainsaws to even stop the logging before the tree even falls. And now he's working on, and so that when that first came out, we were so curious, so excited, sharing that all over the place. And then now what he's done is taken that same listening device, and now he can hear when the birds are changing their song. So that means there's an intruder in the wood, in the forest, so they can stop the logging before there's even a chainsaw out. And now he's using that same technology to track whales off the coast of Ireland. And so it is just so fun and so engaging to know that in a world that's so seemingly full of problems, there are people that are working on them. And I think that's one of the things that I want to convey to people that are interested in what Ever Widening Circles does, is that we're not wearing rose-colored glasses over here. We're not saying that everything is perfect. No one should be saying that everything is perfect. If everything was perfect, I don't think we make progress. But to make progress, we need to recognize that bad things are happening, but there are people on the case helping out. Very often the news story just leaves you with the bad thing. They don't then tell you who's helping and where you should go, maybe spend your time and energy helping out yourself. And so that's really what we want to be, is this kind of curation of things in the world that are happening, that are meaningful, that either fundamentally change our understanding of the world because it's awesome, literally it fills us with awe, or because there are these people out there that are actually making actionable change towards some of the world's biggest problems.
Mm-hmm. What you're doing and what you're showcasing, and what I think our world is becoming, is people who care and people that are becoming more self-reliant and are taking on tackling the problems instead of waiting for government or an organization to take care of it. So it is a community endeavor. And that's, that's what people need to realize. Like when you see a problem, to, try and tackle it and try and help it. And to also think as when you help somebody that you're actually helping yourself. So I feel like a lot of us just go through our life not thinking about other people. So I think this broadens the perspective, what you're sharing, all of that information to help people become more community minded and more helpful.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so critical that we think of goodness as something that's the result of our actions, not something that we're all like endowed with, or that there's good people and there's bad things. I think goodness really comes from is the result of leaning into the power of shared human connection. It is a powerful force, but it is the result of us, seeing a mom struggling with some paper towels at the grocery store and leaning in to help. It is the result of being moved by a news, program and going and helping. It is the result of people like Topher White, going to volunteer and then seeing a problem, seeing their expertise as an engineer and stepping in to help. And I think there are people, we say there's the learners, the helpers, and the doers in this world. Not everybody has to be up in the tree, on the front lines, in the refugee camp. Not everybody has to be the doer. No, not everybody has to be standing at the front lines, but we can be helpers and we can be learners. Like we can teach kids can be learners. They can learn about what a good world is. I think we tell kids all the time, make sure you're doing something in the world that's very positive, but we don't give them actionable steps, or we don't tell them, here's a problem, here's how you can fix it. And then there's helpers. And there's so many people out there, and I see them all the time now that for the year that we couldn't help in person, there were these people that just wanted to connect with other people who were helpers. They were which is part of the reason why we started the Conspiracy of Goodness Network, because we needed a place where these doers could find the helpers and learners who could push their work along, where doers could find each other. I mean, the number of times I've seen people who have great intentions get bowled over, I would use other bad terms for what happens to them by companies that don't really care about the fact that they're doing good in the world. And like, we'll take their buck and we'll go. Like, we need a place, we need a community where all of this ecosystem of goodness could learn and thrive together and really build off of each other. And that was really the impetus for growing the Conspiracy of Goodness Network, was this strong need to make this ecosystem of goodness that you're describing, this world where people are wanting to be kinder and wanting to be more resilient and seeing a problem and stepping into it. There had to be a place where people could learn from one another, could find collaborators, could find supporters of their work together. And, for years we'd been talking about it. And when we came across the words Conspiracy of Goodness, we kind of clicked into that and said, okay, that's what this is. There's this quiet wave of goodness and progress going on around the world, and we need to connect the people that are part of it.
So how does that network work, and how would somebody find out more about it, and what would be the benefit for them?
Yeah, so the Conspiracy of Goodness Network it's a monthly subscription to be a part of that membership, because we host tons of events. Members get access to the events, they get access to each other. We host 2 events a month. We host a workshop for those that are more in like the doer space that want to learn about how to grow their reach, grow their business, grow their ability to help. We have those workshops. Then we have happiness hours where we have conversations with people in our community and people that come from the outside that are teaching us about how we can do good in the world, learning from one another. We also, as members of the group, work on a monthly, we call it a monthly challenge. And these things range from getting ourselves to read 10 extra pages a day so we can start to work on ourselves. You can't pour from an empty cup. You got to pour from what's left over. So we're working on things that are this world of personal and professional growth for goodness. And so people can learn more about that by going to conspiracyofgoodnessnetwork.com. And there they can try out, we have a 7-day trial. They can come and they can join us. We have events, like I said, every 2 weeks, essentially. So they can get a part of that. And then they can also access, we have some online courses coming out, so they can access the online courses as a member, and also access a library of content that we're putting together that's actionably helping people work towards goodness, along with, of course, connecting with all the other members there. It's not like a LinkedIn, it's not like a Facebook. We really want to put the social back in social media, and have a place where there's not going to be a fight breaking out in the comments over, whether or not to use a microwave on spaghetti squash. I've seen that fight, but really create a place where we can nurture one another in a social space online.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea too. So you sound like you're quite busy with all of these things that you're doing. Wow. But it sounds like that's really beneficial. That's a good platform for people to connect. So I think that's a very good idea. All right.
Yeah, it was really a need that we saw. And I think it was one of those things you had to step into to make a change. It was our moment of being like, okay, we're seeing a problem. We've got to put into action something that we want to fix.
Yeah. And also you have a podcast, or your mom does a podcast along those lines?
Yep. We have the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. And she talks to thought leaders every week who are leaders in the Conspiracy of Goodness, people that are on the front lines, the doers, making our world a brighter place. And what I love about those episodes, and I think our listeners love, is that you're talking to people that are seeing real world problems like out there on the front, but they have hope for our shared future. And every conversation he has is really helping us. I think it transforms the way we can look at what's possible in our future, and hearing it from people who are on the front lines, it's always good to know the people that are working on the big problems see a brighter future for us all. I think that's something we all need every day.
Absolutely. What would you tell somebody who, does see like the mass media news and, feels it makes you feel bad, or you're not happy with what you're seeing or accessing? What would you tell people? What should they be doing?
So we have this thing we call the 4 shifts, and I can go into that a little bit for you. So the 4 shifts are the 4 ways that we can engage with media more mindfully in order to start seeing, not only to sort of change the way our brains work, but also to change the algorithms that are showing us media. So firstly, our brains are conditioned to whatever we see a lot of will come to mind first. And so if we're seeing a lot of negativity on our social media, or we're seeing all of this negativity on the news, our brains will think of that negative scenario first. And so we have to start changing the way we do that. And the way that we help people walk through this is to think of the 4 shifts. So the first one is to pause. Every click we make online, every choice we make to engage with something is a vote. So if we're online, that means that, every time we click on like or click into a video or an article, we're going to get shown more of that. And in the real world, the more that we choose to put our attention on things, the more it'll come to mind first in our brains. So really is first pause, ask yourselves, okay, is this really, let me just take a moment here. The second thing after you've paused is to ask yourself to ignore more, right? So ask yourself, does the world need more of this, right? Does the world need more of those crazy, insane headlines that I'm clicking on social media? Does the world need more of me complaining about the produce at my local market? Does the world need more of me complaining every time I go out to lunch with my friends, right? Ask yourself, does the world need more of this? So ignore more of the stuff that's coming at you that's negative, the stuff that doesn't, serve a bigger purpose. From there, then start seeking signs of goodness and progress. So the third thing is seek signs of goodness and progress. This can be online. Go out and search for media that makes you feel positive. Go through your social media feeds. And if you're seeing things that consistently make you feel negative, not that you disagree with them necessarily, it's always important to know what the world is looking like. But if you have a social media account that makes you feel bad about your personal body image or your lifestyle, you don't need to follow them, and that's okay. You can seek other things that are making you feel uplifted. So seek signs of goodness and progress in your conversations. Seek out signs of goodness and progress instead of falling into the downward spiral with your neighbor about the bad weather and their kid that's done. Seek the signs of goodness and progress that are happening in their lives. Get curious about what's happening in other people's lives that is good and showing progress. And the last thing that we suggest is share. So online, we can like things all we want. We can click them all we want, but that doesn't actually get anybody else to know about them. And in the big world of algorithms and how the internet works, sharing is the most important thing you can do because it creates a ripple effect for media. So if you find something positive online and you want to share it on your social media, do it, because that way you're having a ripple effect on other people. And that really does there's lots of studies to show that what we're engaging with online has a deep impact on who we are offline. And then, of course, in person, again, sharing those stories of positivity, having outlets like Ever Widening Circles where you can have a wealth of things to pull on when the downward spiral conversations happen, sharing with your friends that goodness is happening. And again, it's not Pollyanna to see this. We know that there are problems in this world, but in order to make progress for them, we need to elevate and share the stories of the people that are in the front lines changing those things. We need to share the stories of the people in our communities who are doing good in the world, or else those people are just going to continue to be in obscurity and not get the support that they need. And the people who are shouting loudest and the most angry, both in our online and offline lives, will get the most of our attention. And as we know, attention is the most important thing in making change. So pause, ignore more, seek signs of goodness and progress, and share them. And if you follow those 4 steps, you will start to see more positivity, not only in your social media, but also in the world around you. It will change how you engage with almost everything in your life. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the most important things we found.
Mm-hmm. And there's probably a lot of research that shows people that that's true. Yeah.
Yes.
What actions do you feel the mass media should do to make the news more positive?
I think the number one thing that is important with media to start focusing on is sort of adding solutions to the journalism, right? I have so much respect for people in the media. Whenever somebody says, I'm going on a news diet, I'm not consuming anything, I'm like, no, do not. We need to be informed. If we want to make change in society, if we want to make change anywhere, we have to be informed citizens. We know what happens when we fast as human beings. We come out of that fast, we consume more of what we told ourselves we would never consume again. And we are like dazed and confused and grumpy. Do not do it. Do not go on a news fast. We need to consume our news. We need to consume it, but we need to think of it as a diet, right? You can't consume heavy food every 5 seconds. You can consume those nutritious things 2-3 times a day. So on our side of things, it's important that we look at what we're consuming, because that will also inform the media that gets made, right? So we can do all we want, stand on our head, spit nickels, try and get the attention to get things to change. But really, if we think of our click or our watch as a vote, what we watch, we will get more of. What we click on, we will get more of, because all media makers are looking at the clicks. They're counting the clicks, they're counting the shares, they're counting the likes. And so as media makers, people are seeing what people are reacting to, and they're creating more of that kind of content. And so again, it goes back to the 4 shifts to some degree, is that if we see media that's doing a good job, right? You've got a podcast that's really doing a great job of not only explaining what's happening in the world, but then somebody that's fixing it or elevating the voices of people that are on the front lines. It's a little bit on us to make sure that we're sharing that we're supporting those podcasts, that we're listening to we're supporting them in any way we can. And monetarily is a huge thing for any media, because no one makes a media decision without, especially big organizations, they're not making a decision without looking at the money flow. If we're choosing to be conscious about that, we'll push media to change. And I think one of the most important things that needs to change is creating media that has a solutions bent to it. In cases like I just talked about, when the rainforest was on fire, we heard about how the rainforest was on fire, but we never heard about Topher White, who is the one who is helping to stop that. So where is my grandmother going to send her donation money? Where is any of us going to be able to explain to our kids, no, the world is not on fire. I mean, it's literally on fire, but the future is not on fire. I promise it's still going to be good. We have to have stories to tell ourselves and to tell each other. So I think that's the biggest switch. And we play as consumers, play a huge role in making that happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what about when people are, going to seek out positive news? Of course, your website, but what would you tell them? Like, what are good ways to do that?
So I think one of the best ways I found is to start by having 1 or 2 media outlets that inform you without making you feel like the world is a disaster, but only do it. Again, don't do it don't check your Twitter feed every 15 minutes. Don't turn into the news. If you have the news blaring in the background of your life, turn it off. Find something that you can turn into to be informed for 15, 20 minutes a day, tops, 30 minutes a day, tops, a newspaper, whatever. Slow media is a really great way to consume media. I am a New York Times reader, but I only read it when I get my check-in in the morning. I don't try and read it every 5 seconds, because we have created this 24-hour news cycle that just puts you in a panic and makes you want to tune in to learn more, because maybe the rainforest is no longer on fire, or maybe that political problem's been solved. Who knows? I got to go check, right? So slow down, take a deep breath, consume stuff that's when you need your meaningful, news meals in the day. Consume media that makes you feel very informed, where the information is equating to the way that you feel afterward. If you're feeling really down after you've gotten that information, are they using fear or anger to try and trigger you into coming back tomorrow? Be cognizant of that. But then, so that's how you can start to gauge what you're already listening to. Is if you're feeling a lot of fear, you're feeling a lot of anger, maybe either turn down that particular news feed a little bit more, or elevate it if you feel truly informed afterward. And then when you are on social media, when you're figuring out who you want to follow on Instagram, or what blogs you want to read, or all of those things, find a niche that really engages your curiosity, and in a non-morbid way, not like, ooh, this actress looks this way after these many years. Find something that engages you in that same curious way that you were as a kid, that kind of childlike wonder kind of way, and engage with that side of your brain. Because what you will start to see is news stories won't just pop up, but things about art that are interesting to you, or science you'll start to see what we see on our side, which is this array of media that's not just news. There's so much information coming out about science and art and politics. Are not the only thing in the world. I think we now think that media is politics, but it's not. It can be so many other informing things. So if you start to let yourself get curious in that childlike wonder way, the algorithms will start to work in sort of the opposite direction. They will start to show you more positive, more interesting, more curiosity, positive, not morbid, curiosity driven things. And you'll start to consume those more and find those outlets. They'll start to come to you. That's the algorithms are supposed to serve us that way. So really, I think it starts with taking a gauge on what channels are currently coming in, and then seeking out channels that engage with that childlike wonder and curiosity, that make you feel fascinated by the world and make you feel uplifted by the world. And other than Ever Widening Circles, which obviously I can be a champion of, you will find other places that will engage with that kind of side of your brain, which is different for everybody.
Yeah, that's such a good way to explain all of that. Yeah. What do you see Ever Widening Circles becoming?
Yeah, this is something that we're really working on. I think that right now we have so much going on that we're really trying to hone it down into giving people a space all together, right? I think right now we're like, welcome to the world of goodness. Here's all the good, right? But really creating a space that is a gateway to goodness for people, right? Where we can open the doors and they can come to Ever Widening Circles and be able to see the wider range of array of goodness that's happening in the world. And so I think what I see us becoming as we go forward is a place that confirms for people that the world is still a good place. I am always surprised at the people that come to join the network, and they want to join simply because they believe that the world is still a good place, and they can't find any other place where people also believe that. And I think it's time for us to stop saying everybody is broken, let's try and fix everybody, to say what is happening that's working, and where can we meet up together? Where can we learn together about what is good, what is making progress? So that is what I really see for the future of Ever Widening Circles, is really becoming a clearinghouse and exchange of goodness for people, so that we can start to feel like there's progress. And those of us like yourself, like so many other people I talk to, who do know that the world is a good place, that we know that there is a reason that we have hope for the future, that those people can all come together, tell stories together, learn together, and be able to, make a change in the world, and make an audible difference to say, hey, this kind of media that matters is important, and other places should be paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I know. We hope. Yeah. I'm glad that you're doing it. I mean, and thank your mom for starting it, and the person that wrote to her. I mean, it was just a beautiful thing that came about.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I think serendipity brings us so far in life. When we are leaving ourselves open to serendipity, when we leave ourselves open to fascinating conversation between two people, when we try and see people for who they really are and appreciate who they really are, leave space open for someone to reach out when they're feeling very low, or we leave space, and then from there leave space for us to grow into something that can be world changing for people and give people a new perspective on the world. So, I think serendipity leads to so many interesting spaces in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Because your mom was kind, and because she was open, and obviously you guys all have that same philosophy, which is beautiful. What life advice do you have for young people working today?
I think the number one thing I can suggest to young people is be broadly read. Now, I mean, this is sort of an odd thing, but there isn't going to be one book that changes your life. There isn't going to be one guru that comes in and changes your world. There's not going to be one philosophy that holds you up in every situation in your life. And I think one of the most important things I always tell young people is diversify where you're learning from. If you have one philosophical view, go learn about another. If you have no philosophical views, start opening up a lot of books. If you are interested in business, start reading, the Harvard Business Review, or things that start to give you a broad look at the things that are important in your life. Because there will come times in your life, as a young person in work and a young person, making decisions, where no one person will have the answer, no parent will have the answer, no boss will have the answer, you won't have the answer. And the more that you come to those problems pre-prepared, with knowledge from thinkers and philosophers and business leaders, or, religious leaders, or whatever it is that resonates with you, a diverse group of people, you'll be able to pull the things that will resonate with you most and that will bolster you when you need that knowledge most. And I really encourage young people to not just listen to the podcast, read the whole book. Don't just read the synopsis, read the whole book, or go listen to what that person, go listen to the full TED Talk. This is really important because we will build a better skill set to navigate our lives if we are making the content that we consume and the stuff that forms our foundation as diverse as possible.
Yeah, fantastic. What do you feel humanity needs to work on to make our world a better place?
I think it goes back to curiosity. I mean, I didn't intend for this podcast to be the pro curiosity interview, but I think it goes back to curiosity. I think we need to be curious about one another. I said it earlier, we need to be able to turn contempt into curiosity. I think that especially when it comes to making progress in the world with people that are stubborn or unyielding to progress, being curious with those people, asking them why, learning more about them, going into conversations with people in a way that is curious, makes it so that we are not pitting each other against each other. Instead, what we're doing is engaging in dialogue that makes the other person feel seen and uplifted and understood. Because very often when we come against things that are resistance to change, even positive change, when we come against resistance to positive change, that's coming from somebody's personal lived experiences or set of experiences or upbringing. And if we can be curious about why people hold the beliefs they do, we're honoring the fact that they lived an entire life to develop that belief system, while also being better equipped ourselves to then go talk to the next person or understand our own perspectives more deeply. And I think if we just approach the world with curiosity, we could solve more problems because we would be more diverse thinkers, right? We'd be able to be an engineer in the rainforest and think of cell phones, or we'd be able to convince people who seem hesitant to change to be on the side of progress and to be interested in helping the world along its journey. Mm-hmm. So I guess it comes back to curiosity. We need to cultivate it. We need to make sure that we are, if generations, my generation and before me is gone, we need to keep cultivating in young people, because that's what's going to change the world, is if everybody is curious and remains open and curious throughout their entire lives.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Liesl.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It was great chatting with you. I learned.
Yes, you too. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it, and I want to thank you for being somebody in the world who is we call them co-conspirators in goodness, somebody who understands that goodness is important and that we all play a role in moving our whole world forward.
Thank you very much.